Oh my gosh, Christine, I am so excited to have you here. It's like everything came full circle because we met virtually, I think on LinkedIn through a mutual friend. And now you're here on this podcast. And I'm so excited to have you here. Before we dive in, I would love to know a little bit more about you and how did you get into this field of being a business mentor?
I tell people really candidly, I didn't set out to do this. And I think that's important because I think a lot of people who get into I'm a mentor or I'm a coach, especially in the world of business, do that because they pursued it. I didn't pursue it. I got asked and kept getting asked to do it. And the difference is I grew up in the world of business and I've helped create a lot of revenue for a lot of different businesses in lots of different sectors all over the world. That was my jam. And I knew at some point I would create my own business. And when I built my first business, I was doing it as a side hustle. It was meant to build an extra $10,000 of income a year. That's what I was focused on. And I built it 1 hour a day. And people kept saying to me, "Can I buy you coffee or a glass of wine?" Because they could see it was working. And it was like, "How do you build something an hour a day?" I said, "Well, I know what to do." And it didn't occur to me that that was quite unique. And so what happened was people kept then, I said, wanting to pick my brain. And eventually people say, "I can now see what you see, but I can't apply it to my own business." And that's the key. It's not enough just to have the knowledge. You have to build the connections and the dots to the sequence of what it is you want to create. And so it was through that people kept saying, "I would highly value your expertise and I would highly value your time and I will respect it and I will pay for it." And at the time when I kept being asked to mentor people formally, I really wasn't sure I was comfortable with the ask. And so I went to some peers and they said, when somebody wants to build $100,000 business, I would want you in my corner. Or if they want to build $1 million business, I would want you in my corner because I've built both. And I've really spent a lot of time in some great moments, but I've really had to pick myself up a lot in the journey. And that's what you need in a coach. That's what you need in a mentor because the expertise is how you accelerate. And so I tell people I was invited in to be the mentor for other people. And when I'm working with somebody today, that's how it happens. You don't buy a $9 thing and then decide to hire me and you fall into this accidentally. It's a conversation and it's like, can I help you? What is it you want? Where does my expertise maybe support you? Because I'm a thinking partner at the end of the day. I'm not building your business for you. You have to build it for you, but I can really help you connect the dots. I can help you see the next piece of the puzzle, and I have a really good network. So when you're ready to maybe hire or support, chances are I can help you skip a few steps. And that's really valued to people because they don't have the luxury of
I
this long runway anymore.
I love that. I love that you say I was invited in because I was invited in as well. If you would have told me 20 years ago that I would have a digital marketing company, a platform that helps entrepreneurs and be doing a podcast, I would have laughed in your face. And so there's no way, like I don't know the first thing about marketing. And when I did it with my own business, same thing happened. People were saying, can we meet for coffee so I could pick your brain? And then finally I got coffeeed out. And I'm like, listen, y'all can show up at this place at this time, and I'm going to just answer all your questions at once because I am tired of just meeting
Yeah,
individually.
and
And
it
that's
can
what
be
led
great.
me
And I
on my
said,
path.
picking your brain is really lovely, but you also said if you respect it, invest in it. That would be my advice to my general friends. I said,
Yeah.
you know, this you get what you pay for. And the moment people started to say, "I respect your time and I'll
Yeah.
pay for it," was a real shift. I said I had to get my head around it because when I looked to the market, I looked at other people who were doing this as a business and I thought they have no
Mm,
credibility. They've never picked themselves off
yes.
a floor. They've never been sued. They've never hired or fired or been through legal. They've never been audited. I said, well, what happened? Like, that's the world of business. And yet,
Yes.
too many people were
Yes.
getting
You're
caught. And I
so
said, I
right.
don't want
And
to be in that
I
rush.
do pay attention to that when I'm looking at different companies, even for myself to work with and to partner
Mhm.
with, right? Or a coach to coach me is what have you been through? Like I want somebody who's been through it, who has actually done it rather than somebody who is just, took an online course and said, "Hey, I'm a coach."
I've been
Right? Like,
certified.
what did you do? How many businesses did you build? Like, talk to me.
Yeah.
So
No,
I
and there's
appreciate
a lot of
you saying that.
yeah, there's a lot of hate in the marketplace because of that. And I said, I want you to have lived, because lived experience is the most valuable kind. And from there, I also want you to be talking openly about the highs and the lows, because
Yeah.
I have been in business a lot more years than most of my clients. And every day there's still a really big, wow, I did not see that coming. Now we have to figure this out.
I love it. And you're so right. You're so, so right. So today you're going to be sharing about building an audience of buyers.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, why is this important? Because we know our avatar, right? We've talked about that, we hear that, but what is an audience of buyers? How is that different?
I think that this is where I start really just hopefully peeling back the layers, because the world of marketing, and I've spent a lot of years in it, tells you that your avatar is really your ideal client. It's likely a client you have today. And so you describe them. And that's typically by demographic, by income level, and by all these attributes, which can help you copyright. It can help you pick your brand styles. It can help you pick your images, and it can help you, be that in their mind. But that's somebody who has already reached the place of enlightenment. They already get your special sauce. They've already put money in your pocket, and that's great. And you should celebrate them and reinforce that they're in the right space. But if you're looking to grow your business, the thing that is the hardest bit is, who is your next client, the future buyer. And buyers are really a small subset. And knowing that she's 40 in Boise, Idaho, and she has dark hair and 2 kids and a dog doesn't help you really find your next buyer. I don't know anybody who that's helpful with, because they're like, well, I'm in the right room. She's all over the place. I'm like, yeah, but is she buying from you? And they're like, no, I have crickets in my field. Buyers are unique, right? Like, I'm walking
They
about,
are. You're right. You're absolutely right.
where's your next client coming from? And that's the thing that makes all of us
Yes.
feel sick in the stomach. I don't know. Is the
So,
answer.
yes, but you're right, because I have even often said, think of who that person is, and where would you run into them? Where would you see them? Like, what do they like to do? So what are some of the distinctive characteristics that you look for in a buyer? How do you name them? Because we already know the avatar is like the demographic, the age, the income, right? But what are you looking for in
Well, yeah,
identifying who your buyer is?
there's 3 things that buyers are. First off, they're a small subset. So let's just talk about this, because I think we all think everyone's our buyer, but they're not. Buyers are only about 3% of the population in your sphere of influence on any given day. So it's not a lot, but it's 3% different every day. So that can all really compound to quite a big pool of potential buyers. But buyers have 3 unique things. They are problem aware. Okay. If you're trying to convince somebody that they need you, that is not a buyer. Get out of that lane. You'll go broke here. But they're problem aware. So your job is not to convince them they have a problem. I have one. Second thing is that they're seekers. So they're actively looking for alternate solutions. Chances are they've gone the free route. They've tried self-discipline. They've tried to white knuckle the way through a repeating problem and haven't reached where they want to go. So they go, there's got to be a better way. So they're open-minded, and they're seekers is part 2. The third thing is that they have a real recognition. I can't get there by myself because I've tried it, and I'm committed to
Mm.
trying something else. Doesn't mean they're going to love it. It's going to be uncomfortable, because changing patterns is not a fun thing. It's an effort-based thing, but they are committed to, this is a non-negotiable. Staying here and repeating this pattern is insane, and I see that, and I need to change something. So they're really open, but committed to changing the inputs to change the outputs. And so if you can think about those 3 things, when you're out and you're building relationships and you're looking for people, I always tell people, think about the 3 lanes of traffic, because you want to be able to identify, where are they? If they're not problem aware, they're a someday client. That's a slow lane, but nurture them in the slow
Mm.
lane. The person who says, I know I have a problem and I'm in the crisis, this is your moment to honestly make an offer. And I don't mean an offer out of the gate, but an offer to, do you know something else is out there? I actually have seen it. Would you be curious about what it could look like? And that's just curiosity. But that's the bread and butter of your business. That's the buyers of today. There's also a fast lane, which is somebody who's actively seeking, probably already knows you, probably already has decided you're going to help, but they need some incentive to move. And so you need to move quickly. And what that means is take leadership to make the offer, because they will say yes quickly. And usually yes to something they've already really thought about for a long period of time. That's the short path from curiosity to paid client. But if you can assess people when you're meeting them, are they problem aware? Are they
Mm.
already recognizing that there is a need for some support? So they're seeking. And are they committed? Because you can't drag buyers uphill. It's just exhausting. I would just say don't, but maybe you will try. Trust me, don't. Please just don't. But if you think about that, then you're always assessing when you're engaging your priority and your next step accordingly. Instead of this really blanket approach where all you do is describe the problem or describe the avatar, and that's not helpful to the buyer, because the buyer
Right.
is either having one of two things happen. I don't see myself in your story, in which case I don't move, and you're trying to convince me and I'm entertained by you, but you're likable and not a must hire. Or I do see
Mm.
myself in your story, but chances are I feel shamed, judged, criticized, and I don't like how that icky feeling feels to me. And I don't want to move forward because I'm going to have to get visible with some
Yeah.
shortcomings. And I think when you understand that the buyer has those three things, you want to look for it, because your goal is to get them moving. And you need to understand the intersection point, because demographics are not an intersection point. They're just a fact. But how do you get a buyer moving is to understand, where are they? Where do they want to go? And what's the thing that gets them moving? Because that's really where your marketing magic has to happen. And if you can't recognize them, categorize them, and invite them, you're going to always struggle with new client growth. That's optional. Just
I
saying.
I love the analogy that you used with the three lanes. And
Mhm.
you're talking, and I'm thinking of all the different ways to really utilize that, right? Like,
Mhm.
when you, first off, we're not even going to get to the marketing piece of it, but even when you meet somebody at a networking event or randomly, right, through friends, I c- I see the benefit of just kind of picking up of like, what lane are they in
Mhm.
and what are they saying? Right?
For
What are they
sure.
saying? But okay, so I want to back it up because I'm like, this is really cool. I love this. I do. I love this analogy. And I could see it
Mhm.
almost becoming second nature when you meet somebody to
100%.
automatically, after
Because
doing it for a while, you probably do
I do it
it.
all the time. And it is the single biggest benefit of working with me, because it's about critical thinking. And I think critical thinking needs to be boosted if you're going to be an entrepreneur, because you're constantly
Mm,
evaluating. I don't want anybody working 100 hours a week, even to build a many million
right.
dollar business. That's not the goal. I was there, didn't recommend it. I don't want it. So I don't build my client growth that way either. But if I can assess my most valuable time and my capacity to, am I in the slow lane, the middle lane, or the fast lane? What are things that are income producing? Who am I spending my time with? And assessing this as a critical muscle and skill you build. Honestly, it simply is distilled by this. This is the 80-20 principle in action. What is the 20% of the effort that creates 80% of your results? So when you're assessing decisions, people, opportunities, and everything, you're always going, is this part of the 20%? Because if so, that's a heck yes. That way you stay out of the overwhelms. And it becomes
That's such great
really a
advice.
simple way to do
Yes.
business. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes it so much clearer. It like
Mhm.
takes the avatar to a whole new level. But let me ask you this, right? So this sounds all great in theory, and
Mhm.
but if somebody is listening right now, they might be thinking, well, how do I recognize what these buying signals are? How do I know what lane they're in? And is there something that you listen for, or how do you figure that out?
Yeah, the number one thing you're listening for is curiosity, because
Oh,
curiosity is
okay.
the number one human trait that is indicating movement. And you can figure out, how many steps you need. And I'm going to tell you, Google tells us it's 7 to 12 minimum research in the dark before you ever see somebody. So you have to think about your business strategy in terms of, I need multiple ways for them to stay curious, to create a movement, and that's how you build momentum. So when I think about the avatar analogy of descriptive, demographic, and nature, I said, that's great, but it doesn't create any movement. So if your goal is curiosity, I want you to be jumping into the deep end of where the buyer is sitting, this potential new buyer, and thinking, what are they thinking? And what action, curiosity can you spark that shows them that where they are right now is not the only option? And then that's an invitation to a step, a safe step, like not a first date marriage proposal. It's a first step. It's small, but you want to cast imagination. And that's a really important part. I always lead from hope. I believe we should stop the hate bro marketing that's out there. And I said, what gets them moving with a hopeful step? They don't want to buy a unicorn. They're looking for such a small win. How do you help them see that win as possible today? How do you show them what the win could be? How do you shore up confidence that it's possible for them? Those are all small micro steps. But guess what? A 1% step taken every day creates this really strong client conversion piece, which is by the time that they evaluate, move, and keep focused on curiosity, they show up in your ecosystem curious and say, I've looked at these programs. Tell me a little bit more about them. Instead of you trying to convince them, this is what I think you need. You say, well, why did that one spark your curiosity? What was it about this outcome that's desirable for you? What makes this a now decision for you? Those are all curiosity questions. And when I am in a place with somebody in my business who's come into my world and I say, why do you choose me? What do you think I can do to help guide you? That's the moment where I decide, do I make an offer or do I recommend other assets and resources to them to help? Because I will always help.
Oh,
But I'm figuring that piece out. But it is about looking. If you know that the buyer has those attributes, your goal, it doesn't matter whether you want to embrace I love marketing or not. Your goal is to spark curiosity, because curiosity is the number one trait that gets moving. And we need to focus on the movement because it is ultimately the only thing that will build your momentum.
wow, you dropped so many bombs right there. Like so many golden nuggets. I'm like, wow. Yes. And so okay, so we talked about building that curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
What are some ways you can build it, right? Because I'm in digital marketing, so my first thing is, of course, social media, email, your website, right? But are there other things, like what do you do, or what would you recommend to somebody who is a small business owner to spark that curiosity and get the ball rolling for that person in the fast lane or even the middle lane?
Well, you want to build unicorns. Like that's ultimately your goal.
Right.
To create an engine that's more unicorns in your business, which is more people quickly
Yeah.
moving through your experiences to say yes quickly. And you finding good compatibility there. It's the right buyer who's prepared today to invest their dollars today, and you can guide them to the result predictably. So, I always think there are a million tactics in marketing, and I will tell you, controversially, all of them work. All of them work. Or you wouldn't hear about them. So the issue is, how do you want to build your business? And it doesn't matter whether it's digital marketing, if it's speaking, if it's SEO, it's usually going to be a combination of things, but all of them have to start with some simple questions. The first thing is, who are you and what do you stand for? Because you need to own that identity, because people are naturally curious about people. And you have to show up as a person in your business. And I don't care if you want to be personally branded, the front face of your business, or someone up. The business reflects the people. So the first thing is, who are you? What do you stand for? And yet telling your stories, not from the point of it's about me, but this is what's about me that I can relate to you around. Because that's a curiosity piece. It's a connection piece. That's the first one. The second thing I think it's really important is to understand, why would they hire you? Like, what's the result they're looking for that you are uniquely qualified to provide footprints in the sand for them to follow? And then the third component to that is, what's the result and what are the footprints? Because your goal is to say, hey, I'm an interesting person, not ego-wise, but human to human. And then from there, I understand the results you're seeking because I've been there before. And I'm confident I can help you get there, because hopefully that is exactly what you feel about your business. If you don't, we have a bigger problem. But saying, I am confident I can get that result, not just for myself, but I can guide others. And then here's some footprints. Again, those safe 7 to 12, 20 touch points that say I'm credible and I know what I'm talking about. And are you curious how to keep moving? Because the biggest thing people will ask you is, I don't know how. Just tell me how. And I always think that's a really interesting question, because I hear it all the time from my clients. I'm like, I know the answers how. I could give it to you in a nanosecond because I've got a lot more experience than you. The issue is not how, really, because how is a knowledge-based problem. We actually can find the how. Google's around, Pinterest, YouTube, wherever. We can find the how. But what they can't do is connect the how to themselves and to stay consistent in the movement. And so you want to show up. I can help you get there, because that's truthfully what you're doing, right? It is that simple, and it's not effortless. And we all have our blind spots, but you want to slow it down to help them build that curiosity that, how do you know where to go? Like, they're still going to keep asking how. How do I get there? How do you know how to get there? How did you figure things out when you took a detour? All of those are really important questions. And your goal in the marketing components, I think, are always about recognizing to intentionally create stepping stones so that they go, I'm curious. And it might not be, I'm not ready today, and that's okay. But you really want to be able to then assess. You said you've been around a while, you've taken a lot of steps. What's really going on in your world? And they're like,
I just had this conversation with somebody else. Yes.
The answer's not how, because you know the answer of how is the problem, how we could solve quickly. Generally, it's how do we apply the how that they really struggle with. And the best answer to that is not by yourself.
Interesting. You know, I love the part that you said earlier about the story and sharing your story and what makes you unique. And I cannot tell you how many times somebody has gone to my website, because I share on the marketing website, I share that story of how I really ended up there. It's like, you know, pretty much like the house just landed. And it's like, this is how I got here and what I did to get here, right?
And it's a human story.
It is. And people will say all the time, men and women, they're like, I really liked your story. And that's the reason I'm calling you. I read it on your website. And I honestly forget that it's even on the website until somebody says, I read your story on your website.
And remind yourself.
Yeah.
Remind yourself, who are you? And here's the tip I tell clients, and it always makes them scared. We usually work up to this. It's usually not the first hurdle we go over together. But I say, honestly, the story you don't want to tell is probably the one your client of tomorrow needs to see and hear. Oh. Because they're in the dark, and what they need to know is you were in the dark too. Because the moment you start to put yourself too far away from them, as in, I've got it all figured out, I'm a perfect person and I can just lecture you, I start to move away. But if I go, oh, you're credible, you sat in the dark, I can see how you're working through it. It is the hero. But the bigger thing they're looking for is, can you help me be my own hero of my story? And that's why I always tell my clients, honestly, the story you don't want to tell, which might be, I never imagined to get here, wasn't pretty, is probably the story that's the most impactful. And I said, you might not want to be that brave, I get it, on day 1 or day 3 or year 5 of your business. But truthfully, your confidence of owning who are you and what you stand for is where the doors open. Always will open. Because your buyer is trying to find you in the dark. How do I know that?
You know what you just shared, I'm over here thinking, and I'm thinking as a marketer, right? And when I'm talking to somebody on my podcast, and we said this off air, right? I get the honor of learning from every single one of my guests, which is so cool. But as you're talking, I actually switched gears and I put myself as a buyer, thinking of a program that I'm part of, that I paid for, and I'm not thrilled with. And I paid quite a bit of money for it. And I'm like, I'm not really feeling it. And you just explained why I'm not feeling it. It's because they're kind of off doing something else. And what I thought I was getting was somebody that shared my story, but was like a little bit ahead of me to guide me. I actually got somebody that's checked out and just kind of said, here, I'm using my name to
Heartbreaking
get
to
you
hear it's not.
involved, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you just spoke to me as a buyer. I'm like, that's why I'm not into it. That's why I don't show up. It's because of that.
Well, and this is an interesting thing, and this is honestly the biggest challenge. I work with a lot of creatives. A lot of my clients are marketing people, people who've been in the marketing spaces, creatives by nature. They would call themselves creators of some kind. Selling something intangible is usually always a hallmark of it. And I said, the issue is you know so clearly your inside, your heart, your backstory, the skills you brought to the table, and yet articulating why you're the must hire is sometimes a little elusive. But the biggest challenge is not you trying to justify you. It's actually you
Yeah.
connecting to the future buyer. And I think that that's a gap. It is a gap in the marketplace. And I don't see a lot of people talking about it, but it is the gap that everyone's not facing the elephant in the room. And when I'm working with my
Yeah.
clients, I said, this, how do I know it shows up? Here's a perfect example. So this might be a little tight in the mirror if you're looking at yourself.
Yeah.
It's if you are talking about your programs and services and you get caught into the feature element. So you're going to get 3 of this, 4 of this. It's going to last this long. You're going to get a lollipop, a unicorn, and ta-da, you get me. You are caught justifying yourself. And none of that helps your buyer make a decision. Because what that really
Yeah.
sounds like from the buyer's perspective is a lot of effort. And what did they want?
Oh, yeah.
Not a lot of effort. I want the outcome without the scars,
Yeah.
truthfully.
Hmm.
And that's why they're
Yeah.
where they are, because they've tried that route. And so I said, with the moment they shift their moments to the buyer perspective, it's like, I actually do know this is going to be work. And I really want somebody to hold my hand. And I really want someone to be human with me, to not judge me, and to really educate me and help me be confident in the decision making. That's honestly the fun bit of where things happen. But I said, I see it time and time again. I said, honestly, 5% of the buyers really care about the how and the nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
All they really want to know, because the moment they say yes to you, and every day they show up in your space, is they say, I trust you to guide me to where I want to go. And when you say, I'm not loving this program and I'm not showing up, it's because you don't trust them to get you where you want to go, because you're finding that incongruency. And the moment you have those
Yes.
incongruencies, we check out one side or the other, and sometimes both.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yes. Yeah. I agree with everything you just said. So you dropped so many like great little pieces. In fact, as you guys are listening, like hit the replay and listen one more time, and this time take notes because there is so much information that you shared with me. But Christine, if you could summarize in a sentence or two, what would be a key piece of advice for businesses on building an audience of buyers?
I'm going to say start at 50,000 feet, because these are really simple questions. And because they're so simple, we skim them. And I said, who are you? What do you stand for? Who's your person you want to serve? What do they want? And ask these very big questions and really hold space for yourself to get the answer. And the answer will often come in communication. You have to go talk to people, because so often we get right into the weeds, right into the nuts and bolts, right into the details because it feels good, and complication is what we love. And I'm going to encourage you to see the world that I see it, which is business is actually simple. It's human to human. It's understanding what's driving our behavior so that you can tap into curiosity. It's not complicated. It is effort focused on the right thing. So I'm going to say, yes, there's a lot of details in this episode. Yes, I want you to make notes, but the most important question you're going to ask is like a toddler. So what? All the answers you figure out, then ask the question. So what? I drive myself crazy. I drive my clients probably crazy too, because I said, sounds good. Is it true? Like, I stand for this. Do you? And I'm not difficult about it, but I
Whoa.
am tongue in cheek saying it now. I said this to somebody today. They said, I have 3 things. I run a beauty business. I have a speaking business, and I want to do some more MC work. And it's really hard for people to understand the 3 things. And I'm really struggling for people to know that I actually want to be paid. And she's just a friend, somebody who I've been a guest host with on a platform for a couple of
Yes.
years. And I said, "Who are you and what do you stand for?" Simple question. She's like, "It's this." And I'm like,
It's
"Stop selling your future buyer short. They will be multifaceted. You are multifaceted. But the thing that we start at is 50,000 feet." I tell people in the business
mm,
world, what do I stand for? Creating a client growth engine. That's it. That's what I do with my clients. I help them make better decisions so they confidently can know they go into the market with simple foundations in any economy, in any piece of the puzzle where they want to iterate their business or change who they serve or change where they want to serve. So the questions are really simple. But don't let their simplicity mean you don't spend enough time on them. Because once you answer
mm.
them, I want you to hear me in your head. So what? Sounds good. Is it true? And if it's not true, there's another layer of onion. Keep peeling. Because the moment you can own it, I said, it's when you start to be the magnet, which means consistency and confidence in the future of your business and confidence with your clients. And all of that creates amazing ripples.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Christine. And what a great note to end this on. But how can somebody work with you if they are listening? They're like, I need somebody to take my hand and walk me through this. What is Christine's information? How can they reach you?
Yes, thank you for that invitation. I'm going to say this is also a really simple answer. Come find me at christinecampbellrappin.com. You'll see my name spelled out on probably the show notes or even here on the screen if you're watching,
Yep.
but that's the simplicity of it. Come find me at my name, and from there you can explore, and I'd love to have a conversation with you. Simple to the end.
Awesome. Christine, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing so much of your knowledge. This
My pleasure.
was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. We will catch you next week. See ya.